In the spring of 1834, a discovery in central Virginia tore through the veil of rural tranquility, exposing a horror that still haunts history beneath a modest farmhouse. 47 children were found chained in a basement, their lives stolen by a woman they called Mother Sullivan. This is a story of deception, cruelty, and the courage that brought it to light. If you dare to uncover the darkest secrets of America's past, this is your journey. Hit subscribe, ring the notification bell, and join our community of fearless truth seekers. In the comments, tell us, where are you watching from? And are you brave enough to face the shadows in your own backyard? In the early 19th century, Millbrook, Virginia, was a quiet hamlet of roughly 50 families, where tobacco and cornfields stretched across gentle slopes. The Sullivan farm, on the town's outskirts, blended seamlessly into this pastoral scene. Its Federal-style house, with white clapboard siding and a wraparound porch, was unremarkable, flanked by a red barn and a chicken coop. Ezra Sullivan, who purchased the 200-acre property in 1809 with inherited tobacco wealth, and his wife, Constance, were seen as upstanding, if private, citizens. Constance, a poised woman with dark hair and a soft voice, spoke of caring for orphan children from her Pennsylvania family, a story that resonated in an era of high mortality and Christian charity. Beneath this facade, however, lay a sinister reality. The Sullivan basement, far from a typical root cellar, was a sprawling, soundproof prison. Ezra had hired local craftsmen over decades to excavate and fortify it, paying in cash and ensuring no worker saw the full project. Stone walls, designed to muffle sound, formed chambers where 47 children aged 6 to 16, speaking different languages, were held captive. These were not orphans under care, but victims of a trafficking operation, kidnapped, purchased, or lured from across states. Constance Sullivan orchestrated this horror, her charitable persona a calculated shield. Constance's deception was masterful. She attended Methodist services sporadically, citing health, and explained the children's absence by claiming they were traumatized, to shop for public view. At Henderson's General Store, her large purchases of flour, salt pork, and medicines raised mild curiosity, but her tale of sick orphans dispelled doubts. The community, steeped in trust and piety, saw no reason to question her. Even Reverend Samuel Matthews, the local pastor, lauded her compassion, unaware the children he never met were chained below. The basement's construction was a study in secrecy. Workers recalled digging specific sections without context. There, silence bought with generous payments. The chambers were designed for control. Iron rings embedded in walls held shackles. An interconnected room served purposes from punishment to record keeping. This hidden world allowed Constance to operate undetected for over 20 years, exploiting the era's lack of oversight over vulnerable children. Constance's manipulation mirrors tactics used by modern predators who exploit societal trust. Her persona leveraged Millbrook's Christian values, much like how cults often cloak abuse in spiritual rhetoric. This case highlights how unchecked authority over children common in the 1830s enabled systemic evil. A precursor to modern child welfare reforms, the Sullivan farm's normalcy was its greatest weapon. To passers-by on the dusty road to Richmond, it was just another farmstead. Yet, the late-night lights and occasional hammering hinted at something amiss. Dismissed as farm improvements, Constance's story of temporary care for orphans, awaiting placement with relatives, satisfied neighbors' curiosity. Her purchases, though substantial, were justified by the supposed needs of her charges. This seamless integration into community life made the Sullivan operation a chilling example of evil hiding in plain sight. The Sullivan operation might have continued indefinitely, but for a brutal winter in 1834 that brought unintended scrutiny. On February 23rd, a fierce snowstorm stranded merchant Jacob Stern, who sought shelter at the Sullivan farm. Ezra and Constance, visibly tense, offered minimal hospitality. That night, Stern heard muffled cries from beneath the floorboards, which Ezra dismissed as wind in the foundation. Unconvinced, Stern left with lingering unease, his suspicions a faint spark in the darkness. 3 weeks later, on March 15, Mary Catherine Flynn, a young Irish immigrant separated from her family during a river crossing, sought refuge at the farm. Constance welcomed her with food and a bed, but Mary Catherine vanished. Her family's search, reported to the Richmond sheriff, yielded no trace, and she was presumed lost to the wilderness. These incidents, though troubling, were not yet enough to unravel the Sullivan secret. The decisive moment came on April 2, when farmer William Hutchinson, hunting rabbits near the Sullivan property, heard piercing screams, desperate cries of terror. From behind a stand of oaks, he watched Ezra emerge from a cellar door, glance nervously, and descend again. The screams, emanating from beneath the house, were unmistakable. Hutchinson shared his account with neighbors, sparking debate. Some believed the orphans might need discipline. Others recalled oddities, Constance's excessive purchases, the farm's nocturnal activity, the absence of children at community events. Sheriff Benjamin Crawford, a veteran lawman, initially dismissed the concerns as gossip, but agreed to investigate. After Hutchinson's formal complaint, on April 8, 1834, he and Deputy Marcus Webb arrived at the farm. Constance greeted them warmly, offering coffee and letters supposedly from Pennsylvania relatives about the orphans. Her composure held until Webb, stepping outside, noticed the cellar door secured with 3 padlocks and heavy chains, its wood scarred with claw marks. When he alerted Crawford, a faint cry for help rose from beneath the kitchen floor, shattering the illusion. This moment echoes the 2008 discovery of the Fritzl case in Austria, where Joseph Fritzl imprisoned his daughter and their children in a soundproof basement for 24 years. Like the Sullivans, Fritzl relied on secrecy and a normal exterior, showing how predators exploit isolation. Hutchinson's vigilance mirrors the neighbor who reported Fritzl's odd behavior, proving the power of community action. Crawford demanded to see the cellar, citing routine inspection. Constance's demeanor shifted, her face paled, her hands trembled, and she stammered about the cellar's dangers. The cries below grew undeniable, forcing action. The sheriff's decision to investigate, driven by a farmer's courage, marked the beginning of the end for the Sullivan operation. It underscores how small acts of suspicion can dismantle even the most entrenched evils. Analysis: the 1834 Virginia setting, with its fragmented law enforcement and trust in local figures, enabled Constance's deception. This case parallels how modern trafficking networks exploit gaps in oversight, emphasizing the need for systemic vigilance. Hutchinson's role highlights the importance of community members as the first line of defense against hidden crimes. When Sheriff Crawford and Deputy Webb forced open the Sullivan cellar door, a wave of stench, human waste, decay, and despair overwhelmed them. The basement was a masterpiece of cruelty. Stone walls muffled sound, iron rings held shackled children, and chambers served sinister purposes. The main room housed 47 children, aged 6 to 16, emaciated and clad in rags. Their silence, broken only by initial cries, spoke of broken spirits. Smaller rooms contained stocks for punishment, a crude medical area, and meticulous records. A hidden passage led to a burial chamber with 36 children's remains, some killed by violence, others by neglect, buried underlined. The records revealed a chilling operation. Since 1812, over 90 children had passed through the basement. Some were sold, others died, and a few remained long-term prisoners. Constance Sullivan acquired victims from corrupt orphanages, kidnapped runaways, or lured them with false promises. The children were conditioned to call her mother, a perverse twist on familial trust. Punishment: starvation, isolation, or worse, enforced compliance, while minor rewards created a hierarchy among captives. Ensuring control, the Sullivan basement mirrors the calculated cruelty of modern trafficking dens, where victims are dehumanized to maintain order. The psychological manipulation, convincing children they were abandoned, parallels tactics used in cults or abusive systems to erode hope. This case exposes the vulnerability of children in an era without centralized welfare, a gap that allowed such horrors to flourish. The children's conditions were dire: fever, respiratory issues, and skin infections from the damp, unventilated space. Deputy Webb, a father, was overcome with nausea. Crawford, a seasoned lawman, struggled to process the scene. The medical room showed Constance's pragmatism, not compassion, but a need to keep victims functional. The burial chamber's grim discovery answered the question of what happened to the missing children, revealing a cycle of exploitation and disposal. The Sullivan case recalls the 1970s House of Horrors in Philadelphia, where a cult leader held followers in a basement, using starvation and fear to control them. Like Constance, the leader exploited trust and isolation, showing how such crimes persist across eras when oversight fails. The records were a gold mine for investigators, listing names, ages, and arrival dates alongside notes on behavior and suitability. They showed a network spanning states, with Constant buying children for $50 to $100 each, amassing wealth equivalent to hundreds of thousands today. This evidence, combined with the physical horror, confirmed the operation scale and sophistication, setting the stage for a broader investigation. The Sullivan discovery exposed a vast trafficking network. Constance records revealed correspondence with contacts in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and beyond, using coded language to discuss merchandise and quality control. A letter from a Morrison in Philadelphia offered 6 children, noting their temperaments and need for training. Financial logs showed Constance profits over $8,000, a fortune in 1834 earned through buying and selling children across state lines. A key witness, 14-year-old Rebecca, provided a breakthrough. Kidnapped at 9 from Pennsylvania, she retained a sharp memory, recalling her capture and overheard conversations about other trafficking sites. Her testimony guided federal marshals to raid plantations and warehouses, rescuing over 100 children. Another witness, Samuel Pierce, a former overseer for Henry Blackwood, a Charleston plantation owner, exposed the network's southern arm. Blackwood's experimental quarters used Sullivan's children for medical tests, torture disguised as research, and brutal labor. His records documented 37 victims. Only 4 survived. Blackwood's experiments echo the Tuskegee syphilis study 1932 to 1972, where marginalized people were subjected to unethical medical tests. Both cases show how power and prejudice enable systemic abuse, with victims treated as disposable for scientific gain. Pierce described Blackwood's 1833 demonstration for buyers, where children were displayed like livestock, their abilities and resilience tested for sale. The event's businesslike tone discussing children as commodities shocked investigators. The network's financial scope was staggering, with transactions in the hundreds of thousands modern equivalent, fueled by demand from wealthy Southerners for exploitable labor. The Sullivan network's sophistication reflects early industrialization's dark side, where human lives became commodities in a growing economy. Constance's role as a female mastermind challenges stereotypes of 19th century crime, showing how gender norms could be weaponized to evade suspicion. Her operation prefigures modern trafficking networks, which rely on secrecy and corruption. The investigation faced resistance. Powerful figures, including a Georgia legislator, used influence to evade arrest. Threats targeted investigators. Deputy Webb was attacked, and a witness, Timothy, vanished. Constance Sullivan's death in jail officially suicide raised suspicions of murder to silence her. Despite this, federal marshals secured evidence, leading to arrests and convictions, though some perpetrators escaped justice. The Sullivan case reshaped American justice. Ezra Sullivan was executed in 1836 before 3,000 spectators, confessing his crimes. Henry Blackwood died in prison in 1841, possibly poisoned to prevent further revelations. 2 Charleston physicians were imprisoned, their careers ruined, prompting medical ethics reforms. However, many powerful figures escaped, using wealth and connections to dodge prosecution. The case spurred Virginia's first child protection laws, mandating orphanage oversight and adoption checks. Federal statutes expanded marshals' authority to tackle interstate trafficking, laying groundwork for modern justice systems. The Sullivan farm was demolished, its basement sealed, and a cemetery built for the victims. Though most names remained unknown, the surviving children faced a long recovery. Many, like Rebecca, carried lifelong scars but built new lives with support. Rebecca, whose testimony exposed the network, lived to 73, raising a family but shunning publicity. Others struggled with trauma, some dying young from related complications. The Sullivan case exposed the era's failure to protect vulnerable children, driving reforms that echo in today's welfare systems. It parallels the 1980s McMartin preschool case, where community trust delayed justice, showing the need for skepticism toward unchecked authority. The public was horrified yet riveted, with newspapers dedicating issues to the case. It shattered romantic notions of charity, replacing them with demands for oversight. The phrase "another Sullivan case" became a warning against blind trust. Sheriff Crawford, promoted to federal marshal, pioneered child crime investigations, his report shaping law enforcement training. The Sullivan horror teaches us to question respectable facades. Evil can hide in plain sight. As Constance Sullivan proved, communities must stay vigilant, reporting anomalies like Hutchinson did, Rebecca's courage shows resilience's power, while the case's reforms remind us that tragedy can spark change. We must protect the vulnerable, ensuring no child suffers in silence. If this story chilled you, share it with a friend who loves dark history. Hit like, subscribe, and comment. What allowed Constance's deception to succeed? Are secrets still buried in history? Let's uncover them together. The Sullivan children suffering echoes as a reminder. Protect the vulnerable. Question appearances and never forget the past lessons. Join us next time to explore more hidden truths. See you in the shadows.